Hello, I am Mike Narrow with UE Systems, the ultrasound company. Today we're going to have a tutorial on UE Spectralizer 4.0. We're going to do this in two parts. The first part, which we're working on now, will be a brief overview of all the functionality of Spectralizer 4.0, just a brief overview of it. On the second section, we will actually go into how to operate Spectralizer 4.0. If you do not have the latest version of UE Spectralizer, please go to our website. It's under Products, then Software, and you'll find UE Spectralizer 4.0 there. Download it. A lot of new functions, a lot of new capability here for you to use to analyze your sound waves, so please get the latest version. If you can't get that, please contact us at 1-800-223-1325. 1-800-223-1325, and someone will help get a copy to you, but ready available on the internet at uesystems.com. Now, first thing I'd like to say is about Spectralizer, if you don't know, there are three different modes that we can use here, and the modes are, and I will come up here and click on the mode button, and you will see real-time, record, and playback. Normally we operate it in playback mode, where we have gone out, captured a sound, and we are analyzing that recording. We also have a real-time here, which means we can simply watch it in real time. We've hooked up Ultra Probe to our laptop out in the field, and we're analyzing it in real time for as long as the battery will last on the laptop and the Ultra Probe. Record, same feature, we're watching it in real time, but we're recording it straight to a computer, to the laptop. Normally, again, we use it in playback, but you do have options there. We will talk about the playback mode. I have opened up an FFT pattern, which is generally the way Spectralizer opens up in the FFT, the fast Fourier transform, and I have played a wave file of corona, the electrical discharge known as corona, so we can have something to look at here. The FFT is the fast Fourier transform, and it's simply, as simple as I know how to put it, it's breaking down all the frequencies of that sound and showing us the amplitude of those certain frequencies. So we can analyze it. A sound is comprised of many different frequencies that gives us the overall tone or sound heard. So we want to break it apart and say, hey, what's going on here? What's going on at this frequency? Those things may mean something to us. So we can analyze it like that in the FFT. Speaking of the FFT, let's look at it a little bit. Right now you see on the y-axis you have decibel. Do remember that we really do measure decibel in negative numbers, where 0 would be the loudest there. So you're looking at a negative number, where here would be the loudest at negative, what is that, negative 48, and the lowest point would be down here at negative 69, 68, somewhere in that area. So remember, they're negative numbers that you're looking at, but it doesn't really matter, as we do realize the higher the peak, the louder the sound. Okay, so the y-axis is decibel or amplitude. On the x-axis of an FFT, we're looking at frequency. We generally deal with in sound with hertz, cycles per second. So we're looking at that in hertz. You do have the capability of changing that scale to cycles per minute. Alright, we'll leave it in hertz, as that's normally the way we do it, but you can use cycles per minute if that's the way you like to look at it. Okay, looking at the same thing, just different terminology there. Now, we see corona here. Let's look at some of the options up here at the top left of the screen, where it says File, New Recording, Open Wave File, and Save As. Very simply put, new recording would be something we're recording straight to the computer. Open Wave File means we're playing it back from something we've recorded previously with an Ultra Probe or an external recording device. And Save As, we're going to save another copy and change the name of it to something else. Okay. We'll talk about how to save in the next section, so that anybody can play the sound wave. Right now it's playing as a very specific wave file. I'll show you in the second section how to change that. Save configuration, load configuration, simply put, means we can arrange that screen any way we want it to. Look, we can change the color of the chart, the grid work, everything, the spacing, from what frequency to what frequency and what decibel to what decibel, and then save that. We could say, hey, this is Mike's electrical configuration, this is Mike's bearing configuration, whatever you want to name it, and then you can load that every time it opens up. So a very nice feature there. to be able to save it just the way you want and use it over and over instead of it always defaulting to UE Systems format there. Save overlay, load overlays, kind of the same idea, except we're going to save overlays, meaning let's say I want to save Corona as an overlay and use this later on down the road. I want to compare it to itself 2 years down the road and see if it's the same. So I would save it, save the overlay, name it whatever I want to name it, and then down the road I can always load that overlay. It's going to save that to a file of overlays that always stays with your computer there, and you can use it. Even when you update, those overlays will be there as it saves it. Okay, so remember that you don't always have to go back to the original spot where the recording is sitting, maybe in DMS or somewhere on your computer. If you'll save it as an overlay, it'll pull it back up to view over your current. Now remember, an overlay is just a picture of the sound. It's not the actual sound file itself. But if you just wanted to analyze and look at the picture again down the road, you can do that. And as you notice, you can load up to, if you look over here on the right hand side of the screen, up to 4 overlays on that FFT with the current recording in white, which is data. So you have 5 different sounds being able to view there, and the controls for those are down here. Turn them on and off and set new ones, and then you save them. Once you play the sound, you set it, then you come up here and save it. Okay, so easy enough there. Cursor controls, we have many different cursor controls with the FFT. You have a very movable cursor. If I turn cursor 1 on, you notice it's very movable. If it's off screen when it comes on and you can't see it, simply click on the star, it brings it to center, and there's cursor. You have 2 of these that you can turn on and measure the distance in them. I can't see cursor 2, so I will click cursor 2, bring it to center. It would help if I turned it on. There it is. How about that? Sorry for the short pause there. You would think I might redo this recording, but a good example. What I did not do was actually highlight cursor 2. Even though it's on, I did not have operation of it. I don't have operation of it until I actually highlight the name of cursor 1 or cursor 2. Alright, and then if I simply move those cursors between 2 peaks, I can measure the distances, so on and so forth. And it gives me the exact frequency and decibel there of where those cursors are placed. You can nudge them around with the nudge tools, move them around as you see it moving now. So easy enough with the cursors there. We have a harmonic cursor. Very nice feature here. There are 2 ways to turn the harmonic cursor on. Number 1, if I know that it's Corona and it should show up at 60 Hertz if you're here in the States, or if you're elsewhere in the world that operates on 50 Hertz, you could type in that cursor. This was done in the States, so I'll type in 60, and that's going to give me a harmonic cursor at 60 Hertz once I turn it on, and there it is. Okay, now let's say I don't know what I'm really looking for, but I see a bunch of peaks. I would simply place my crosshairs up there on the first peak and hit shift left click, and it'll show up right there. If I wanted to move that somewhere else, I'd hit shift left click again, and you see that it's giving me the exact location of where I placed it and where that harmonic cursor is being placed. It's not lining up very well, so we know that's not a good place for it. Okay, but again, if we type 60 in here, it'll bring us home to the exact peak there for Corona, for instance. Now that number, of course, will change for whatever you're looking for. But remember, shift left click will give you control up here by moving the harmonic cursor around, or you can just simply type in the number here. Either way, it's going to tell you exactly where the placement of that harmonic cursor is, either in CPM. Remember, you can change that to CPM, or Hertz like I have it now. So it's going to show you 60 Hertz or 60 CPM, whatever you're set to there on the x-axis scale. So nice cursors there. Okay, there is one other cursor I would like to talk about that we have. To turn the harmonic cursor off, just simply come to the box and click in the box, take the check mark out, and it's gone. We have 4 spot cursors though I'd like to show you. We call them spot cursors. So you would line up your cursor, your crosshair, excuse me, where you'd want that cursor, and simply hit Alt left click anywhere you want it. And I'm going to place them here, here, and here. And you have up to 4 of these that you can do. Well, I guess it's 3 actually. Up to 3 that you can place on. 60, 120, and 180. So I know I've got something very repetitive there at 60 Hertz. To get rid of those cursors, if you see that and you want to continue on, simply tap on or left click on the spot cursor and it'll go away. Then you can do more of them, as you see that I'm doing now. Now I'd like to get rid of all of them, and I'll simply left click on each one of them and they're gone. Okay, so several different cursors. You have the main cursors that you can move around, showing you time and dB here in the box down the left hand corner of the screen. Then you have the harmonic cursor over here on the right, and then of course you have the spark cursors. By controlling Alt left click will give you your spot cursors. Okay, we have the crosshair mode, and that just simply means, and you can change the way your crosshair looks by the way, but that simply means I am moving around the screen with the crosshairs. Alright, then you have a magnifying mode, and you can zoom in and out any way you like. You can draw a box around the area you want to zoom in on, or you can choose the arrows, and if you'll simply just left click, it will zoom in. Alright, to zoom out, you'll come back to the magnifier glass, choose the zoom out function, and left click, and it will zoom out. If you hold it down, it zooms all the way out. Alright, so that's as far as that goes. You notice that popped up a box that said it was rescaling. That's okay, just hit OK, and it'll bring the whole thing back into the picture. It's just going to rescale it for you. You went too far on your zoom out, is all it's saying. Okay, and then we of course have the pan mode, which is the hand over here on the right side where my cursor is over here. And pan just means I'm going to pan across the whole view there. Okay, I'm zoomed in a little bit. This actually goes out to about 4 kilohertz down the frequency chart there. So again, rescaling frequency scale, minimum value must be greater than or equal to 0. I went too far, as you notice. I'm at a negative 30 hertz. Well, that doesn't work, so I'll just hit OK, and it'll move it back to 0. Okay, so there are the basic features of the FFT. Now, some of these features will carry on over into the time series analysis. As a reminder, remember that FFT stands for fast Fourier transform, which is just breaking down the frequencies and showing us the amplitudes of each. In the time series analysis, notice it's kind of far out there because I haven't rewound it and run. So let's just play that real quick. I'll be quiet for just a second. Now this is the time series analysis, and I am zoomed really very far in. So what I would like to do is zoom out a little bit, and I'll come down to the magnifier and zoom out and make it a little smaller, and then I'll hit stop, rewind, and run. Okay, so it's given me a nice picture in a time series analysis. Now, time series analysis is not showing us the frequency, it's showing us the time. If you notice on the x-axis on the bottom down here, it says from 0 time, to 511.9 milliseconds. Alright, which it could go a little further out to 6.7 seconds up here on the time bar, and we'll talk about that in a minute as well. But you're looking at milliseconds down here, and you're looking at events occurring over here. Now what I didn't show you, another way to zoom out that I didn't show you on the FFT, but it works just the same, is clicking the numbers here on the scales, on the grids. That says 23. Well, I'd like a bigger number there. I'm going to put 50 up there, and then to center it, I'm going to put negative 50 on the bottom. And I simply click away once I type that in, and I've zoomed out again. So you can zoom out by changing the numbers. You can do the same with the time on the bottom, or in the FFT, if you notice over here, I can do the same here. That says 753 hertz. Let's get rid of that and put 3K, and that'll give me 3 kilohertz. So now I'm really zoomed out on that, okay? And you can do the same with the decibel here. So many ways to zoom in and out here. All right. Notice with the time series analysis, we're watching events happen in time. So we can actually see when those discharges are occurring there, and what time they're occurring at by turning our cursors on. Now, we only have 2 types of cursors with this, and this is the movable cursor. Remember, I cannot see either of the cursors, the whole thing right now, so if I highlight cursor 1, check it, turn it on, I'm going to hit the star and it brings it to center, and now I can go grab that thing. Look at that, I zoomed out further. So what I want to do is get out of that magnifying glass. No one reminded me I was in the magnifying glass there. So let's zoom back out a little bit because I just zoomed way out. Let's zoom in. I'll left click, hold that down until I can zoom in a little bit. Alright, then I'll go back to the crosshair. And once I'm to the crosshair, I can grab those cursors and move them to exactly where I want those crosshairs, okay? So again, two cursors, movable, tells us time and decibel, okay? It also calculates the frequency for us. This is new. Where is that cursor? You know, as far as the frequency. We know what time it is by looking here at 139.8 milliseconds, but what is the frequency of that? Well, the frequency of that calculated is 50.8802 hertz. So anywhere I move that cursor, it's going to tell me what the calculated frequency is of that actual event occurring. Okay, so we don't have overlays either with the time series analysis. Now, what I just did is I hit stop. We're going to run it because I've adjusted the screen many times. I'm going to turn that cursor off because it's in the way. All right. Anytime we rescale, move things, it's always a good idea to hit stop, rewind, and play it again so it adjusts to the new scale or the new grid we created. So we don't have overlays though. In the FFT series, remember, we had overlays that we could view. Here we don't have that. It would be too confusing, as it would be overlaying itself on the 0, because that's where it's based off of. Here's the on the y-axis line of 0. If you kept overlaying on 0, it would build on top of itself and you wouldn't be able to see the overlays. So no overlay feature here. You do have the two cursor controls there. Okay. Now, on each of these, the FFT and the time series, you've noticed I've moved back to the FFT screen. You have lock. You can lock the grids to where nobody can move it. You can unlock it. That also resets it, zooms it all the way out for me. Same as the X and Y, that resets it and zooms all the way out. But over here, if we type on the X point XX and the Y point YY, we can change the grid, the format, the mapping mode, what the visible scale is, just the labels really, and whether they're visible or not. And then the grid color. You can change the grid color, as you see I just did. It'll go back as long as I don't click on it, and I'll change it just a little bit there. We can change all that information as well under parameter tab here, which I will show you. But there are a few features as far as the format, precision, and mapping mode that you cannot change under the format. Grid color, I do like to use the parameter tab to change the grid color instead of this option over here. Alright, now time series analysis, then dual. Okay, so we've covered FFT and time series analysis. FFT, breaking up the frequency, looking at the amplitude. Time series analysis, looking at the events occurring in time. And now dual is going to give it to us both. I'm going to hit stop, rewind, and run. Now, what I have done here is I am playing an FFT on the top screen and a time series analysis on the bottom screen, so we can view it at the same time. We don't have the cursor controls or anything like that or the overlays here. It's just giving you the ability to view both of them at the same time. Same sound, just analyzing it differently. The one control we really do have is the x-axis scale that you see on the bottom, and you can change the FFT to a CPM instead of the hertz scale. Okay. You do have these controls that we talked about, zooming in, panning, and the crosshair mode, okay? Those controls are still available. But really, just to give you an idea of what the two look like at the same time. All right, so that's the dual tab. Waterfall analysis, very simply put, giving us a 3D view of what's happening. It gives it to us in time and frequency. So let's stop, rewind. I'm not going to hit run yet. Let me explain this. To play anything, we hit run, obviously. To stop it, we hit stop. And then we rewind it. Once we play something or run something, you must hit stop for all the options to be available to you. Okay? Because it's still kind of in the play mode, the run mode. We want to get it out of the run mode so we can analyze. So if you'll notice, I'm going to hit run. And it built the waterfall for me. But to do anything, I need to hit stop first, and then that activates everything for me once I hit stop. To play it again, I'd hit rewind, then run. And the record button is obviously if you have something hooked up to record in real time. All right, to the computer, not to your ultraprobe, but to the computer. Now, let's talk about this waterfall analysis. It is basically just giving us over time the exact peaks happening, but where they're happening in over time. And you notice the peaks don't stay constant the whole time on those frequencies. Okay, the more it gets toward a red yellowish color, the higher the amplitude, the more severe the sound is, or louder the sound is. The more cooler colors, the less severe the sound is, or less the amplitude is. I will show how to operate this in the operating section coming up next. Okay, but this is the waterfall analysis, giving us a 3D view, gives us time, it gives us frequency peaks, so we're able to, as well as amplitude, and so we're getting a real true 3D view of that. All right, and then parameters. Very simply put, we can control everything from here, almost everything, from here about how Spectralizer is working for us. What mode is the FFT working in? RMS, vector, peak hold, no averaging at all, exponential and linear weighting, number of averages, FFT windows, several different FFT windows we can use, Hanning being the most common. If you don't know about these things and you're not used to using them, just leave them at the default and it'll work as you've seen. But if you're used to using FFT and you know what you're doing, come in here and adjust it to the way you like it. Optimization, real-time and record mode parameters, faster PC, slower PC. So basically, if you're playing that sound file and the picture's not keeping up with the sound, something's a little slow, adjust the slide here to a slower PC or to a faster PC until it's right. Normally it operates just fine. Chart colors, very easily, all the chart colors, the background, the major axis, x-axis, minor axis, the y-axis, the data colors and the overlay, and the cursors. What colors do you want those to be? Right now they're fine for me, but let's say we wanted to print that screen. If you were to print, let's hit the FFT tab, that screen right now, that's going to have a whole lot of blue ink you're going to have to print. So what we would do is simply change that to another color, a very light color, if any color. You may make it white. Change these to a little lighter than what they are, but different from one another. Let's choose that. Remember to change your data color though. We want a dark color. Now what might that look like? I think that would be much better for viewing if you're going to print it out. So you can see how you can play with all of that. That's also part of saving your configuration. If you change any of this, it'll save the configuration. If you close this out, it remembers and opens back up to this as well. That's also new. It used to default every time you would open it, but it will now open to where you left off as far as what you changed with the colors and everything. It does remember now. Okay, so back to the parameter tab. All right, and then WAV file parameters, showing us where it's stored. You can go to that path if need be, play the speakers, enable the alarms, match playback time to recording time. Of course, we want that. Device, channel, sample rate, resolution. This is a very old recording. Those will be they'll always be a mono, but the sample rate and resolution will be much better with the newer 10,000 recording device. Okay, so we have the parameters, the waterfall, the 3D mode, the dual, the FFT, and the time series analysis at the same time. Time series analysis, viewing the actual event versus time, and then FFT, amplitude versus the frequency, breaking the sound apart into different frequencies and the times. Now, I want to get rid of that light color, so I'm going to come back to parameters and just hit reset to default. And it's going to give me all my colors back the way I had it from the get-go. So anything you mess with, you can always default it back to. At the top here, you notice, let's hit rewind and let's hit run. Now, I am zoomed all the way out, you notice, from what we originally saw, and that's fine. What I want to show you, number one, I'm still in the panning or the hand mode here, so I want to go back to my crosshairs to make sure I don't pan anywhere. But I need to hit stop. Once I hit stop, I can now drag the slider anywhere in that sound versus time, or I can choose it in the counter box over here by going up and down, or simply typing in what point in time do I want to see the scale occurring. So the slider, the time, or the selector box here with the counter box, you can choose where in time you're viewing it. Number of samples for FFT, The more number of samples you have, the harder it's going to be able to pick apart the different frequencies. It defaults to 4096. You can play with that. Once you do reset it to a different number, you need to hit stop, and those are our numbers, or a number of samples that you can choose from. Once you choose a new number, you will need to hit stop, rewind, and run it at the new sample rate. So it will build it at the new sample rate. Okay. Help section. Not much help there. Your help is available in your PDF file that downloads with the software. It automatically attaches it to itself, and you'll find that under Start, your programs, and you'll see Spectral or DMS or Spectralizer, and you'll see your help. Now, there is some help here. If you'll just drag your hand over the area, show context help, and you'll just drag to where you want it, it will pop up what it is. Now, I did learn this way back when by reading all of the help sections, so it doesn't hurt to go through here. It probably explains what FFT and stuff like that is better than I do, but it is available to you. Drag it to where you want it, and it will explain what that particular part is, or you can read the manual that comes along with it. Also under help, authorization and registration info. Authorization, I've already done it. But what you need to do is hit authorization, because that will be in black when you first download it. It'll pop up an authorization code or a registration code. You'll either call in with the registration code or email that registration code to UE Systems, and it gives you all that information there, what you need to do. And you will get an authorization code back, and you will enter that number in there, and it'll authorize the Spectralizer for you. Mode, real-time, record, playback, we talked about that. Edit, very simple, delete and keep segments. And then, of course, the new recording, open WAV file and save as. And again, new recording is just, we would be recording straight to the computer. Open the WAV file means we're opening from a bank of sound files that stays with UE Spectralizer. This, most of the time, your sound files will probably be coming out of DMS, where they're stored, where you've downloaded from a route. If you want to save that file into the WAV file folder, you can simply hit Save As, name it, and save it in there. As an example that you can constantly pull up instead of having to go back all the way to DMS, Ultratrend DMS. We will speak about that in just a minute, how Spectralizer links to DMS. Save as function, two things. If you want to save it somewhere else on your computer, make a copy of it, you would do it here, as well as you can change the type of sound file that it is, so anybody can play it in Windows Media or whatever. Right now it's a very specific WAV file that it's saving it. Save configuration. Load configuration, we talked about that, save overlay and load overlays. The one thing we didn't talk about is reports. Reports is a simple screen capture of exactly what you had on the screen with the parameter information, as well as a place to put notes. Now you can save that as an HTML file or just print it out. So be sure you change the background color before you print, though. Again, it is going to grab that dark blue background. So make sure you change all that before you try to print it. Otherwise, a lot of blue ink. Okay. I hope I gave a good overview of UE Spectralizer 4.0. The other software that we do have is Ultratrend DMS software, which is 3.1, soon to be 4.0 as well, but no matter what, it is linked to UE Spectralizer. So when you go out and collect your data on any of the ultraprobes, the digital ultraprobes, or let's say the 10,000, ultraprobe 10,000 that has sound recording built into it, and that makes it much easier, you're going to save all that information on your route, and when you come back to your computer, you're going to download that route, or what we call groups, into the DMS software. And that's going to keep everything organized and saved, and it's going to have all your sound files saved in there per reading. And there's a launch button next to that sound file, and you hit launch. That opens up UE Spectralizer with that sound file loaded and ready to play. And that's normally the way we analyze these. So it's important to save overlays and stuff like that so we can easily pull the information back up. Once you realize you need to save it, that you're going to use it in the future, save it as an overlay so you can pull it up easily. If you have some good examples of basic corona or basically a good bearing or something, you can simply hit File Save As and save it into your If you notice here, it's pulling up my WAV file folder that automatically gets created with Spectralizer, and I can put it in here. So here are all my good training sounds that I like to use, and so I save those in this folder because they're very good, clean sounds, good clean recordings that I can use in training, and I always want those at my fingertips. I don't have to go into DMS software and find that file somewhere, so I save it here. So many different ways, many different places you can put the sound files. I hope this was a good overview of Spectralizer. I hope it wasn't too in-depth, but these are the basic functions of Spectralizer. In the next section, I'm going to get more into how do we operate it, what do these controls do, not too much about what it all means, but more how to operate all of the features. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. Many ways to contact us. By phone, the phone number is 1-800-223-1325, 1-800-223-1325. By email, info@uesystems.com, info@uesystems.com. Please contact us with any questions you may have. Again, this is just a brief overview. If you have specific questions or need help with something, or if it's not loading correctly when you try to download it, please contact us. We would love to help you. Again, this is Mike Nair with UE Systems. I appreciate you joining us, and join us for the next section of how to operate UE Spectralizer 4.0.